r/AskReddit. What's a scary or disturbing fact that would probably keep most people awake at night? When swimming in stagnant water, you could inhale an amoeba which eats its way through your nose and then eats your brainstem. You can get a flesh-eating amoeba from a water park. Yep, and there is no cure or treatment. There are some medicines that had some effect against the disease, but once you get it, you're almost surely dead. The serial killer Richard Chase would try random houses to break into. If the door was unlocked, he saw it as being an invitation. If it was locked, he saw it as a sign that he was unwelcome. You just made me double check my front door was unlocked. When I was younger, I was in my room one time, home alone. I heard our front door open and someone come inside while everyone was out. Hours later, everyone comes home. I asked. No one had stopped by. It always made me very uncomfortable. I only really heard the sound of them coming in, not leaving. I was burgled a few years ago. It was about 2 AM, and I was sat at my computer wearing full headphones and an Oculus Rift headset, home alone. It's only when I took it all off and went to get a drink that I saw all my downstairs doors were wide open, as well as the rear exit door. It still freaks me out to think someone could have been stood right behind me and I would have had no idea. You could have a brain aneurysm with zero symptoms. Any day it could rupture and kill you from significant blood loss. Happened to my mom's friend right in front of her. The seemingly perfectly healthy woman died at 40 without warning during a work trip and while having drinks with her friends. 1 second she was laughing, the next second she was on the ground. Never woke up again. My poor mom was the one that had to call her husband and kids. Happened to a classmate from high school at 22. Nicest guy ever. Fell asleep on his couch at home and died. People who sleep less than 6 hours a night are at an increased risk to die prematurely. Thank God. I know, right? Nice to get a head start on these things. When an autopsy is performed, the organs are removed, weighed, sliced, and placed into a plastic bag. This includes the brain and tongue. Once they're finished, they put everything together in the plastic bag and place it in the chest cavity. So when you're buried, your brain is actually in your chest. Why is the tongue removed? This bothers me more than anything else. So they can't scream. In the future, archaeologists are going to think that's just as weird as we find ancient Egyptians putting that stuff in jars. There is a spider that has fangs so powerful that it can bite through a leather boot. It usually attacks multiple times and you have to grab it and pry it off of you. It is also incredibly deadly. Let me guess, it's from Australia. Yep. It's estimated that there's somewhere around 25 to 50 serial killers that are active each year in the US. 1 per state. Nice. That's 49 for Florida and 1 for Alaska. Mike Wazowski nodding would be the same as him twerking. If he grew a beard, would it be made of facial hair or pubes? The frontal lobotomy was performed with no anesthesia, and it was an outpatient procedure. It was performed by sticking an ice pick in the tear duct, punching through the skull, and swishing it around in the brain tissue. There was no way to gauge or predict its effectiveness, because you were just swirling it around in brain tissue. And the funnest fact of all, patients were often kept awake and asked questions during the lobotomy to see when their mental performance/behavior changed to determine when the lobotomy was done. The guy who invented and popularized it won a Nobel Prize. Many pandemics come in waves and more people died in the second wave of the Spanish flu than the first. Fortunately, we have good reason to believe this won't happen again given our ability to immobilize the severely ill. The weaker strains are the ones more likely to continue to linger on as asymptomatic and mildly ill folks wander around in public. The stronger strain or strains which have been hospitalizing and or killing people are less likely to continue to circulate because, well, they're hospitalizing and killing people instead of wandering around Costco in search of toilet paper. Back in 1918, ill soldiers were being transported through camps and trenches to medical tents and the like, while healthy soldiers were ordered to hold their ground, ultimately exposing far more people than necessary to these stronger strains. This allowed them to continue to circulate long after the first wave has plateaued and flattened out. If an imploding star were to create a gamma ray burst, and that GRB were to hit the Earth, we'd never know it. Because we'd simply cease to exist. Poof. Of all the many terrifying apocalypses listed in this thread, that one seems like the least scary. No warning, no time to panic, no suffering. Just snuffed out of existence. The best part is because, by the time the light of said GRB arrived, the radioactive material that's following will arrive moments later. In the 70s-80s, the first case of many Southeast Asian refugees in the US, who died screaming in their sleep was recorded. This was common for Lao Hmong men who lived through the Cambodian genocide and CIA recruitment for the Lao Civil War. It's theorized that this was an extreme form of PTSD. One story. The man had stayed up 4 days fearing he would be attacked if he slept. He drank coffee and lied to his parents about sleeping. He did everything he could to keep from sleeping. When he finally fell asleep, his parents thought this crisis was over. Then they heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. He died in the middle of a nightmare. The crazy part of that is how vivid dreams can be. He was probably reliving whatever horror he went through a second time. Cancer is extremely common. You likely have cancer right now. The only things stopping you from going terminal are your immune system and more cancer. That's right, cancer can get cancer that kills the cancer. I use the cancer to kill the cancer. It takes 22 pounds of pressure to pop a testicle. That sounds like a lot. Air pressure is 14 pounds per square inch. So at any given time I'm operating at over half a blown ball. Waking up isn't guaranteed. I'd rather die in my sleep than in any other way, to be honest. I wanna know I'm dying, really experience it. Skydiving without a parachute it is then. On average, you will walk past 36 murderers in your lifetime. Hopefully the next time you do go past one, they'll say, no, not that one, too good looking. Back about 10 years ago I went to this pizza joint for lunch and this one guy brought a slice out to me. That night he stabbed and killed a guy. I'm just glad I didn't complain about my slice being a little cold. Cold been big trouble. There are a fair number of missing nuclear weapons. Scary thing is there's one missing near me, and by near I mean at least 50 miles away, and out of harm's way, but it's pretty close. Man, how do you know it's missing if you know it's 50 miles away? It might be that one lost off the coast of Georgia. They weren't ever able to find it cause they think it's sunk way down in the mud or something. Or maybe the Russians found it first. In the US, if you are the first patient to ever receive that type of implant, or if your implant is part of an alpha study, you have no legal rights to know that. You can flat out ask your doctor and they're allowed to lie to your face and say they've implanted hundreds of these devices before, when you're literally the first one. Let's say you need spine surgery. The main part of that surgery is putting some hardware, an implant, inside your spine forever. Now this surgeon has probably implanted hundreds of A implants before, but the company he gets his implants from just invented B implants, and they need him to implant some patients with B for an alpha study. You were selected as a candidate for the B alpha study. Only your surgeon and the med device company knows that you're the first person to ever receive B implant. You have no rights to know that this is the first ever B implant put inside a person. In fact, if you flat out ask the surgeon, They can tell you it's a implant, and you have nothing to worry about. The one that I remember most often is this one. Either we are completely alone in this universe, or we are not. Crazy to think about, but cool either way. What's really cool is dark forest theory. You know how, when there's trouble in the woods, all the birds and animals go quiet? Alien races are out there, but they are maintaining total radio silence. There's no way to know if another species wants to harm you. The only way to ensure your own species' survival is to destroy any other species you encounter immediately. You probably already escaped death or serious injury in your lifetime by simply being in the right place at the right time. You can actually wake up during surgery. But the worst part is that you are still paralyzed. So you can feel everything what they do to you, but you can't signal to them that you are conscious. This is one of my worst fears. Actually, if a sedative wears off, but a paralytic does not, the only thing you can do is cry. We were taught in school that if your sedated patient cries, you done messed up, and you need to reset it right away. Addition, in the context of what I was taught paralyzation, there is one warning sign: sedation is wearing off. When watching the patient's CO2 levels, while they are breathing, the WAV form the monitor creates will get a notch on it from the patient starting to breathe against the ventilations they are being given. Goats were used as a medieval torture method. Strap someone to a chair for 2 days, with their feet dipped in salt water. Release a goat into the room. The goat will lick the salt of the victim's feet, and since a goat's tongue is super coarse, it will strip the flesh off down to the bone. No pleading, and no mercy. The goat won't care about the screams. In very ancient times, a way of execution was to bend 2 palm trees together, tie someone's ankles to them, and let the palm trees go. They would immediately spring up, ripping the victim in two. It's better to pick up a human head with 2 hands, because it's as heavy as a bowling ball and the weight is uneven. I'm not sure about picking it up by the hair, because I'm pretty sure it would be slick with blood.